multi-level SLA structure component, which includes three levels: corporate level, customer level, and service level. In corporate level, it covers all generic issues related to the organization. For example, security SLAs, which restrict the user to create a password of 8 characters, and they can change it within 30 days. At customer level, the issue related to customer can be dealt with in this level. For example, the security requirement within the department, within the financial department, may need higher security compared to other department. And the third level is service level, which covers the issue related to the specific service. For example, specific finance service or specific department service. What's the scope of SLAs? Applicable service hours, which include in SLA: service availability should be mentioned in SLA, reliability, customer support arrangement. So for example, if company commit that they are going to provide 24/7 customer support, then that service should be available to their user 24/7. Contact points and escalation, service performance, security. Security is one of the important scope of SLA. Cost and charging methods, that how much organization is going to charge for a specific service, that need to be mentioned in SLA. The impact of cloud for people with disabilities. So these are the scope of SLA. Now we'll talk about SOA governance framework, which include SOA governance reference model, which is also called SGRM. It's a generic model that is utilized as a baseline of SOA governance model. It expedites the process of tailoring on an SOA. All the aspects of SGRM are reviewed and considered for customization to the organization environment. SGRM defines the number of constituent parts, which includes guiding principle, process, governed SOA process, process artifacts, roles and responsibility, and technology. So all these are components which is part of SGRM. If we talk about the guiding principles, it assists in the prioritization and decision making for the design, deployment, and execution, that how should SOA should be designed, deployed, and execute. This includes the aspect of people's roles, process, and technology. It should be utilized to aid an organization to achieve stakeholder commitment to SOA. The maturity of the government will affect how these principles are selected and how strictly they are applied. Based on it, the reliability and the liability of the governance takes place. It is expected that subset of these principles will be selected and modified. Modification will be done based on the requirement. It is also expected that the principle will be expanded upon with principles unique to the organization. So SOA governance policy principles are very important, and other than that, creating principle, the implementation plays major role in that how the governance of the organization, how it is applicable, how much it is trustworthy. Based on it, the client, the people, the customer, they rely on it. Here are a few description about the principle and rationale and the descriptions of the principle. SOA governance must promote the alignment of business and IT. SOA governance program should support the business and IT drivers. Business IT stakeholder must participate in governing and enforcing the organization SOA program. SOA is intended to drive flexibility and agility for the business and IT. Failing to govern to foster that alignment will reduce the benefit of a service oriented approach. Next principle, conform to organization governance. SOA governance activity shall conform to business IT EA governance principle and standards. The organization governance procedure are part of the strategy of the governments and should be part of SOA governance as well. So the basic idea is the members who are part of that body, it is the responsibility of them to implement that policy at the low level. SOA reference architecture is required, which provides a set of architecture patterns, standard and best practice to use. It use of approved architectural artifacts from the SOA array will reduce the project risk, lower cost by reducing the number, complexity of design activities in the project. All SOA solution architecture should be created based on the organization SOA reference architecture. If we talk about the provider and consumer contract principle, it exists between service provider and consumers and to ensure the correct delivery of service. Next principle, service metadata enable decision and description relating to the service, their contracts to be stored in a well-known location, which help to understand the purpose of the service. Identified governance stakeholders as a principle shall be identified and accept responsibility for the governance process. It helps to ensure proper execution of governance, communicate appropriate SOA. Tailor SOA governance process principle. It should be tailored based on the objective, project scope and risk, which helps to prioritize SOA governance costs. Automate SOA governance process. Should be possible to automate the SOA governance process, which facilitate consistent and efficient application and reduce personnel required to do the work. Implement funding model. It as a principle, it covers all the services and solutions which ensure an organization is willing to develop and support a needed service in long term. There is also a set of important SOA principles that should be governed, such as service reuse, which is existing service should always be considered first when creating new SOA solution, so that reuse can be done. Service description shall be adequate to support consumer decision to use the service to ensure consumer have adequate information. This includes service metadata, policy, contract and funding models. Service harvesting, it is related to the reusable of service which has existing solution for best source for reusable service. Service monitoring, where service contract should be monitored, metrics should be gathered and available to ensure correct service delivery, service contract violation detection, to feed service and SOA solution governance. Service policy enforcement is responsible for service design and runtime policies to ensure high quality service. Service security, in this principle, service contracts and description should be reviewed, and to ensure correct security level and risk level at each level. Comply with EA is in this principle, SOA service solution should comply with the enterprise architecture to ensure that SOA solution and service fulfill the long-term goals of the organization. Compliance is very important if you talk about the enterprise architecture, uh, because if any issue rises, this principle needs to be take care of that issue. So that was related to the SOA governance principles and how and why it should execute. So that's it for the day. I hope you have enjoyed the lecture. Thank you.